Hello friends, welcome to the discussion on the book Hind Swaraj. It is a book written by Mahatma Gandhi. This is a fifth session in this series. Today we'll be discussing Gandhiji's views on the concept of civilization. But before we move ahead, let me remind you to subscribe to this channel. And please do not forget to like, comment and then share this video once you are done watching it. When Gandhiji speaks about civilization, he is making a very important point that Indians were enslaved not by the British, but by the so-called modern civilization of the British. So the central argument of Gandhiji here is the acceptance of Western practices by Indians and then transplanting these practices to the Eastern soil, to the Indian culture. So in effect, he's putting the blame for our slavery not on the Englishmen, but on the acceptance, uncritical acceptance of British practices by Indians. If this was so wrong, he asks a relevant question that why is nobody questioning it? Right? So he's saying that we rarely find people arguing against themselves. Just think about this concept. He says that those who are intoxicated by modern civilization are not likely to write against it. So he was speaking in terms of the British presence and the modern civilization brought by British, but apply it today to maybe think about ideologies, think about the various lifestyles, think about the culture of alcohol and drugs, or even because you are preparing for civil services, think about administration. The people who are inside the system, they're sort of intoxicated by the power that administration brings. But then these are the people who would not allow radical reforms in the system because they have vested interest in it. So if we assume in these terms that Indian administration will reform itself, or if we put good people into the system, these good people will lead to reform from within. In Gandhiji's views, this is unlikely, because the point is the people who are intoxicated by this power, where he calls it modern civilization, we can use it in the context of administration or ideology or lifestyle or even religion. The people who are intoxicated by this power, they are not likely to go against it. Right? So here he is asking us to think critically, ask the right questions. He says a man, whilst he is dreaming, believes in his dream. He is undeceived only when he is awakened from sleep. So he believes that the people who are intoxicated by power are like people who are sleeping. Think about politics, think about administration, think about religion, think about intoxication. All these things fall in place when you think about this thought of Gandhiji, that reform, radical reform, many a times may not come from within. It needs an external jerk, and this should come from people who are awakened. Next, he says, formerly only a few men wrote valuable books. Now anybody writes and prints anything he likes and poisons people's minds. Now this is in 1908 that Gandhiji was writing. But how true is it in the present context? Think about social media. People go to the social media not to listen, not to understand, not to comprehend, but people go there only to speak, shout or express themselves and shut the channel of communication once they have just put up whatever they want. So it can be audio, visual or even text message. So here he's saying that today, and he was speaking in terms of 1908, but today because of social media this is absolutely true. Next, formerly men were made slaves under physical compulsion. Now they're enslaved by temptation of money and luxuries of life that money can buy. So though he is speaking just in terms of money, we need to ask this question in today's context also. That just think about what happened in Cambridge Analytica and the elections of US, Donald Trump. So it is not physical compulsion that can enslave a population. It is simple. Today it is data, today it is power, and it is the kind of lifestyle and the media of communication that we are using. So here Gandhiji is also asking a very relevant question. What is the place of money? And in terms of ethics, if you think, there are certain things in which if money comes, it contaminates. You need to be very clear where money is placed in your ethical system. So that is what Gandhiji is asking. And this brings us to the question of morality. He says that the so-called modern civilization takes note neither of morality nor of religion. Now this may sound very radical to you, but Think about it. Today, most questions or dilemmas that we are dealing about are because even bad things are being sold in the garb of goodness. Think about social drinking, alcoholism. It has widespread acceptance in society. Think about drugs. Think about evil practices. And many of these things become a culture, a civilization, just because of wide acceptance. And Gandhiji himself has said that in the matters of conscience, there is no concept of majority. It is not applicable. Even one person, if he is thinking right, asking the right questions, then it is not majority which should decide what is right and what is wrong for that particular individual at least. So, Gandhiji is discussing an important concept of ethics and morality here by saying that many a times what we do in the present context is immorality is taught in the name of morality. गलत चीजें सिखाई जाती है. So, I would go to the extent of comparing it with what Indian constitution has. Just think about it. The Western civilization is based on the primacy of individual. The Oriental cultures, Eastern civilizations, especially China, India, these are community based. So a group or a society is placed at a higher pedestal than individual. In our cultures, it is not necessary that individuality has to be diluted, but whatever actions, thoughts an individual has, we always think in terms of the impact on the greater good, the people, the society, the culture. Now, our constitution, right? This again may sound outrageous to some of you, right? But our constitution was made, in the words of even Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, that ransacking 66 other constitutions of the world. In this, we all know that the fundamental rights were taken from the Bill of Rights of US. So this transplanting of the concept of fundamental rights, which is basically based on individuality, that is what fundamental rights are. So the root of fundamental rights is an individual, and that is derived from Western civilization. It's Bill of Rights of US. So we have fundamental rights in our constitution, and we have transplanted these Western concepts into Indian context. And how is it playing out? Think about the debate that went on Sabarimala, the concept of constitutional morality. My question is, the women in reproductive age, menstruating women who believe in Lord Ayyappa, even when it is allowed by law, would they go to that temple? Now, I am not making a particular point or passing a judgment. The question is, we need to understand that the problem that we are dealing with is in the context of society, where the ethics or morality of that society is measured in different metric or different terms than how it is seen in Western civilization. Because there, they are very clear that it is individual rights. I decide what is good for me. No one can tell me that. Whereas in our cultures, the system of faith, community is given primacy. Here, individual also plays a role, but transplanting something from Western ethics into Indian context, it may be out of place because by law you will get something passed, but in practice it will not bring the intended change in society. So Gandhi was speaking about the difference between Western and Eastern civilization, and he was saying that we are selling things which are called as moral or ethical, but it may be immoral or unethical in our context. So that was a very important ethical dilemma that he was raising here. The test of civilization. Now he goes in a bit detail and says that in Western civilization, it is not spiritual, right? It doesn't allow humans to connect with the higher ideal. Rather, it is more about satisfaction, sensual satisfaction. And here, bodily welfare is considered the object of life. But he makes a point that the kind of tools that are used, as you can see in this picture, still it doesn't take care of your body. They lack real physical strength, courage. They keep up the energy by intoxicant. What kind of civilization is this? That is what he's saying. And he is saying that there is a difference between the concept of solitude and concept of loneliness. What we see in the Western cultures is majority in terms of loneliness. People are getting mentally affected because of loneliness. They are not able to deal with loneliness. But Though our culture or the Eastern civilizations have primacy to community, family bonds, groups, society, here people are able to live in solitude. So there is a difference. Solitude is spiritual, loneliness is psychological disorder. So this difference between Eastern and Western civilization, where Western civilization is steeped into consumption, pleasure, and bodily well-being, whereas the Eastern civilization is sitting on restraint. It's based on restraint, sacrifice, spirituality. There's a difference between the two. An application of Western ethics into Indian context would not be appropriate, in the words of Gandhiji. He gives a very strong statement here. He says that English civilization is such that one has only to be patient and it will be self-destroyed. You may debate and disagree with this statement. Even I believe that it has not been destroyed. Civilizations are not rigid, right? In due course of time, they do change, they do evolve. So there are certain good things that we need to observe, understand, and if possible, take up from other civilizations also. This process of learning should always go on. But as Gandhi himself mentioned, that I keep the windows open, I want all the winds to blow, but they should not take away the house, right? So they should not sweep my principles away from me, right? So he believed that English civilization is not something that we should emulate without thinking. So these views he also passes on to politics. He says that parliaments are emblems of slavery. English deserve our sympathy. Representative versus parliamentary democracy. Gandhiji stands for decentralization. And this importance of decentralization we have seen in the context of COVID also. Just think about it. The majority of complex problems that we're dealing with, it may be security issues, it may be global warming and climate change, it may be the issue of COVID and this pandemic. Everywhere, though the problems are global, you will agree that the solutions are local. Even in COVID, if every individual takes care of himself or herself, the community takes care of social distancing, masks, and basic norms, basic hygiene, people will not be affected by this disease. So the global problem can be solved locally, and here it is applicable to global warming, climate change also. So in this context, Gandhiji believed strongly in the concept of democratic decentralization. The centralized response, think about the lockdown, the strict lockdown that we had. India is a microcosm of the world. India is multicultural. Geographically, it is varied. Culturally and climatically, it is varied. So in this context, having a strict central lockdown, it's a debatable issue that whether it did how right it was and what negative impact it had. So maybe if we were strong decentralized communities, the problem of COVID could have been dealt much better than what we did. So ultimately he speaks about the quality of parliamentary debates and the role of vested interest in present politics. Lastly, he says that civilization is not an incurable disease, but it should never be forgotten that the English people are at present afflicted by it. So I think today, if you have to make this statement more relevant, it is Indian people basically. So what has happened is it's not incurable, but the present society. Just look at the smoking, alcoholism, drugs, the problems in our society, the social crimes. We have the issues associated with social media, addiction to it, and the way social media is fueling communalism or problems in Indian society, driving down the fractures. This is something that it's not incurable, but we have to accept and agree that yes, we are affected by it, and we need to have an open discussion, debate regarding all this in our society. So this is all from my side. I'll come with more sessions, interesting sessions on Gandhiji's views expressed in this book, Hind Swaraj. Till then, thank you.